My child. Pause here. Do not let your hand move past this moment, because what you are about to hear was not placed before you by accident. Something unfolded last night in the life of the person you love, something they never planned for, never imagined, and still do not fully understand. The night began like any other, but it did not end the same way. A hidden emotion rose to the surface. A truth they had tried to silence became impossible to ignore. And before the night was over, your name entered their heart with such force that even they were shaken by it. You may have felt something unusual without knowing why. Perhaps your thoughts became restless. Perhaps an old memory returned without warning. Perhaps you woke suddenly, looked at the darkness around you, and felt as though someone far away was thinking of you. You tried to dismiss it. You told yourself it was only imagination, only longing, only another quiet moment your heart had created because it missed what it could not reach. But heaven saw the connection. Heaven saw the exact moment when their thoughts turned toward you. Do not skip this, because the part that changed everything did not happen when the night was loud. It happened when everything became silent. The person you love had expected the evening to distract them. They thought they could keep their mind occupied. They believed that if they surrounded themselves with noise, conversation, movement, or familiar faces, they would not have to face the feelings waiting beneath the surface. They had become skilled at appearing calm. They knew how to smile when someone looked at them. They knew how to answer ordinary questions while hiding extraordinary confusion. They knew how to act as though your absence had become normal. But last night, the mask grew heavy. There was a moment when they looked around and realized that no one there truly understood the battle taking place inside them. People could see their face, but they could not see the memories moving behind their eyes. They could hear their words, but they could not hear the sentence repeating inside their heart. And that sentence had your name in it. Something small triggered it. It may have been a song playing in the background. It may have been a phrase someone used without realizing its meaning. It may have been the way two people looked at one another, or the sound of laughter that reminded them of a moment they once imagined sharing with you. Whatever it was, it opened a door they had tried to keep closed. Suddenly, they remembered more than they wanted to remember. They remembered a detail about you that most people would have forgotten. A look in your eyes. A change in your voice. A moment when you tried to appear strong even though your heart was asking to be understood. They remembered something you said casually, not knowing it would stay with them. And the more they remembered, the more the night began to feel unfamiliar. What was supposed to be simple became emotional. What was supposed to be temporary became revealing. What was supposed to help them forget you brought you closer than before. My child, there is a reason you have not been able to fully release the feeling that something remains unfinished. It is not because you are weak. It is not because you are meant to remain trapped in uncertainty. It is because some connections leave questions behind when the truth has not yet been spoken. But you must understand this carefully, not every unanswered question is a command to chase. Sometimes the silence is where clarity begins forming. Last night, clarity began forming in them. They had been telling themselves a story. In that story, they had control. In that story, their feelings were manageable. In that story, they could move forward without looking back, because what existed between you was either too complicated, too delayed, too uncertain, or too frightening to face. They told themselves they needed more time. They told themselves they needed distance. They told themselves that silence would make everything easier. But the heart does not always obey the stories the mind creates. As the night deepened, they began to notice how disconnected they felt from the room around them. Words reached them, but they did not stay. Conversations passed by, but their attention kept drifting. They checked something more than once, perhaps their phone, perhaps an old message, perhaps a place where they once saw your name. They hesitated. They nearly reached out. Then they stopped. That hesitation matters more than you realize. They did not stop because they felt nothing. They stopped because they felt too much. They were afraid that one message could open everything. They feared that if they spoke honestly, they would no longer be able to hide behind uncertainty. They wondered whether you would answer. They wondered whether you had changed. They wondered whether someone else now occupied the space they had left empty. And beneath all those questions was one fear they had never admitted aloud: what if they had waited too long? Stay with this message, because that was only the beginning of what the night revealed. Later, when the noise faded and they were finally alone, something within them broke open. Not in a way that brought danger. Not in a way that should frighten you. It was the breaking of resistance. The collapse of the emotional wall they had built to avoid facing the truth. They sat in the quiet and realized that distraction had failed. The room felt still, but their thoughts were moving rapidly. They replayed moments between you, searching for signs they may have misunderstood. They remembered your patience. They remembered your distance. They remembered times when you may have wanted reassurance but received confusion instead. And for the first time in a long while, they did not only think about what they had felt. They thought about what you may have felt. That changed the entire night. They began to see that your silence may not have meant indifference. Your withdrawal may not have meant that you stopped caring. Your strength may have hidden disappointment. Your calmness may have been the final form of exhaustion. They started wondering whether you had been carrying pain without showing it because you believed they were not ready to hear it. A question entered their mind and would not leave. What if I hurt the person who understood me most? The thought unsettled them. They tried to argue against it. They remembered their reasons. They remembered why they pulled away, why they stayed quiet, why they acted uncertain, why they avoided saying what their heart already knew. But every explanation began to sound smaller in the silence. Because last night, they were no longer defending themselves against you. They were defending themselves against the truth. And the truth was this. Your presence had affected them more deeply than they ever allowed you to see. You were not simply another person in their life. You became connected to a part of them they had kept guarded for a long time. You awakened tenderness they did not know how to express. You made them imagine possibilities they were not emotionally prepared to hold. At times, they may have appeared distant because the closeness felt too real. At times, they may have acted uncertain because certainty would have required courage. They were not only afraid of losing you. They were afraid of needing you. There is a difference, my child. Losing someone is painful, but admitting that someone has become important requires vulnerability. It requires a person to surrender control. It requires them to acknowledge that another heart can affect their peace, their choices, their future, and the way they understand themselves. Last night, they confronted that vulnerability. They remembered a time when you made them feel seen. Not praised. Not admired. Seen. There was something about the way you noticed their hidden moods, the way you sensed when they were holding something back, the way your presence made their emotional defenses less secure. They had not forgotten that. They had only tried to place it somewhere they would not have to face. But memory returned with precision. They saw your face in their mind. They heard your voice. They remembered how a simple conversation with you could remain with them for hours. And then something unexpected happened. They began to speak to you in their thoughts. They imagined what they would say if pride, fear, time, and distance were removed. They imagined admitting where they had been confused. They imagined telling you that some of their coldness had been self-protection. They imagined confessing that your absence had not brought the relief they expected. It had only made the quiet louder. They may never have said these words to you, but last night their heart formed them clearly. I did not know how much you mattered until I felt the space where you used to be. That sentence changed something inside them. You must not rush ahead and assume the story has already reached its conclusion. This message is not telling you to build your future upon imagination. It is not telling you to abandon wisdom or chase someone who has chosen silence. Heaven does not ask you to sacrifice your peace to prove your love. What is truly meant for you will not require you to become smaller, desperate, or emotionally lost. But you deserve to know that the connection was not as one-sided as it sometimes appeared. They felt more than they showed. They noticed more than they admitted. They carried more than you knew. And last night, those hidden emotions demanded to be acknowledged. There was another moment, a deeper one, when they came across something connected to you. It may have been a photograph, an old conversation, a saved memory, a name, a place, or an object that had become linked to your presence. They did not expect to find it. That is why it affected them so strongly. For several seconds, they simply stared. Time seemed to slow. The person they had been pretending to be, the unaffected one, the detached one, the one who had accepted everything, disappeared. In that private moment, there was no audience, no performance, and no reason to hide. Their expression changed. Their breathing changed. And the truth they had avoided stood before them. They missed you. Not only the idea of you. Not only the comfort of being wanted. They missed the particular way you existed in their world. They missed what your energy brought into ordinary moments. They missed the feeling of possibility that appeared when they thought of you. They missed the version of themselves that felt more open, more hopeful, and more alive when your connection felt close. This realization did not bring them instant peace. It brought regret. They began asking themselves whether they had mistaken patience for permanence. Whether they assumed you would always be emotionally available. whether they believed they could delay the truth and still return whenever they were ready. They began to understand that while they were trying to protect themselves, you may have been slowly learning how to live without them. That thought pierced deeper than all the rest. Because the person you love has noticed something changing in you. Even from a distance, even through silence, they have sensed that you are not standing in the same place anymore. Your energy has become less available to uncertainty. Your heart has begun asking for peace instead of promises. You may still care deeply, but something inside you has grown tired of waiting for clarity that never arrives. They sensed this before last night. But last night, they believed it. The fear that you may truly move forward became real to them. This is where the night took a turn they never expected. They had thought they were the one deciding the pace. They thought they had more time. They thought the connection would remain suspended, unchanged, waiting for them to become ready. But suddenly, they understood that life does not freeze around hesitation. Hearts heal. People evolve. Doors remain open only for a season. And the possibility of losing access to your heart forced them to look at their own choices. They remembered the times they almost told you the truth. The moments when a conversation came close to becoming honest, but they changed the subject. The messages they wrote and erased. The words they swallowed because vulnerability felt dangerous. They remembered the times they watched for signs from you while pretending not to care. They understood how confusing that must have been. A deep heaviness entered them, because they realized that you may have interpreted their fear as rejection. You may have wondered whether you were not enough. You may have questioned your value because someone who cared did not know how to show it. Hear me clearly, my child, another person's emotional limitations are not a measurement of your worth. Their silence did not make you unlovable. Their confusion did not make you forgettable. Their inability to choose courage did not mean you lacked significance. You were never asking for too much by wanting honesty. You were never unreasonable for desiring consistency. You were never difficult to love because you needed to feel safe. Last night, the person you love began to understand this. They saw the connection from your side, and it humbled them. For a brief moment, they imagined what it must have been like for you to care while receiving mixed signals. To feel closeness one day and distance the next. To sense something real yet have no words strong enough to confirm it. They imagined how many times you may have replayed their actions, searching for meaning. And then they imagined you finally stopping. Not because your love disappeared, but because your soul became tired. That image frightened them. They saw you turning toward a future where you no longer wait. They imagined someone else recognizing what they had taken too long to appreciate. They imagined your smile returning without them. They imagined hearing about your happiness from a distance and knowing they once had the opportunity to protect the connection but allowed fear to govern them. That possibility was unbearable. Something in them wanted to reach for you immediately. Their hand moved toward the place where they could contact you. They paused. Their mind filled with questions. What would I say? Would they believe me? Do I deserve another chance to explain? Have they already closed the door? They typed something. then erased it. They typed again. The words were different this time. More honest. Less guarded. But before they could send it, something stopped them. You may think it was pride. Part of it was. But there was something else. They did not want to enter your life again with incomplete intentions. They knew that another half-truth could wound you more deeply than silence. They understood that reaching out only because they felt lonely would be selfish. For once, they wanted to know whether they were prepared to offer clarity rather than another cycle of uncertainty. So they sat there, staring at the unsent words. And in that moment, they made a private decision. The decision has not yet fully become action. That is why you are hearing this now. They decided they could no longer pretend that nothing had happened between you. They decided they could no longer call the connection meaningless simply because it frightened them. They decided they needed to confront the real reason they had held back. And my child, the reason is deeper than you may expect. It was never only about timing. It was never only about circumstances. There is an old wound inside them, a wound connected to trust, abandonment, disappointment, or the fear of being seen too deeply. Before you entered their world, they learned how to survive by controlling how much of their heart others could access. They became careful. They learned to retreat whenever emotions grew too strong. They convinced themselves that distance created safety. Then you appeared. You reached a place in them that had been protected for years. They did not know what to do with that. Your love, or the possibility of your love, did not only comfort them. It exposed the parts of them that still needed healing. It made them aware of how much they desired connection and how terrified they were of losing it. That is why their actions may have seemed contradictory. One moment, they moved closer. The next, they disappeared behind their defenses. They were fighting two battles at once. One part of them wanted you. Another part feared what wanting you could cost. Last night, those two parts collided. There was no more room for avoidance. They finally admitted that pushing you away had not protected them from pain. It had created the very emptiness they feared. They had tried to avoid the possibility of heartbreak, but in doing so, they had begun breaking their own heart. That revelation brought tears to their eyes. Not dramatic tears meant to be seen. Quiet tears. The kind that arrive when a person realizes they have been running from something precious. They covered their face. They looked away from the memory in front of them. They tried to regain control. But the emotion remained. And then they spoke your name aloud. The room did not answer. Yet something shifted. Sometimes a name carries more than sound. It carries memory, regret, hope, fear, and every unspoken sentence between two people. When they said your name, they were not merely remembering you. They were acknowledging you. For the first time, they allowed themselves to say what they had hidden. I still care. The confession was soft, but it was real. They did not know that at nearly the same time, you may have felt a sudden heaviness or warmth in your chest. You may have thought of them unexpectedly. You may have felt emotional without understanding the cause. Do not build certainty upon sensations alone, but know this: emotional bonds often leave echoes. When two people have shared something meaningful, memory can awaken in both hearts during moments of deep reflection. Heaven saw both of you. Heaven saw the person you love sitting with the truth. Heaven saw you continuing to carry questions with dignity. And heaven is not bringing this message to make you anxious. It is coming to return you to your center. Your future does not depend upon whether they find courage. Your worth does not wait for their recognition. Your purpose is not paused because another person is uncertain. But sometimes truth is revealed not so you will chase what is behind you, but so you can understand why the road felt so difficult. You blamed yourself for things that were never yours to carry. You wondered what you should have done differently. You examined your heart as though love had been your mistake. Love was not your mistake. Losing yourself inside uncertainty would be. That is why something has been changing in you. You are being taught to love without abandoning yourself. To care without begging. To remain soft without becoming unprotected. To keep hope alive without allowing hope to become a prison. The person you love felt that change last night. They sensed that you are no longer willing to remain in emotional confusion forever. And that awareness created urgency. Not the urgency of fear. The urgency of truth. They know something must be said. They know the silence cannot continue in the same form. They know that if they return, they cannot return with vague words and unfinished intentions. But there is something they discovered last night that even they were not prepared to face. It came through a conversation they overheard, a message they received, or a truth revealed by someone close to them. At first, it seemed unrelated to you. They almost ignored it. But one sentence changed the direction of their thoughts completely. Someone mentioned a choice. A choice involving the future. A choice the person you love had been postponing. And suddenly, they realized that the decision was connected to you more deeply than they had admitted. Their expression changed when they heard it. They asked a question. The answer they received left them silent. Because what they learned suggested that the time for avoidance may be ending much sooner than expected. There is a reason this message found you now and not yesterday. There is a reason your heart has been prepared through distance, reflection, and growth. Something is moving beneath the surface. But before you assume it means an instant reunion, listen carefully. The coming movement will reveal character. It will show whether words are supported by action. It will expose whether the person you love is ready to approach you with maturity or whether they are only reacting to the fear of losing access to you. You will not need to force the truth. You will recognize it by its consistency. You will recognize it by the peace it brings. You will recognize it because genuine intention does not leave you constantly questioning where you stand. Last night may have awakened them, but awakening is only the beginning. Now they must choose what to do with what they know. They must decide whether to remain hidden behind old wounds or step forward with honesty. They must decide whether to let pride protect their image or let vulnerability protect the connection. They must decide whether they will continue watching your life from a distance or risk telling you what has been in their heart. And they came closer to that decision than ever before. The message they wrote still exists. They did not erase all of it. One sentence remained on the screen long after the others were removed. It was not a greeting. It was not an apology. It was a confession. A confession connected to the unexpected thing that happened during the night. They stared at that sentence for a long time, wondering whether sending it would change both of your lives. Their finger hovered over the screen. Their heartbeat quickened. And just as they were about to make the choice, another notification appeared. They opened it. They read the first line. And what they saw made them whisper, "This cannot be a coincidence." Because the message mentioned you. But it did not come from the person they expected. And the secret contained in the next line was something they had never been told before.